All right, after what, 4 weeks, no UFC, we are back with the main event this weekend. Nassourdine Imavov taking on Kelvin Gastelum in a middleweight main event. We have got 12 fights in this card, a lot of UFC debuting fighters. Our co-main event's a good one at featherweight between Dan Ige and Damon Jackson. Also a top 5 matchup at women's bantamweight. Kelvin Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. Yes, 12 fights here on the first UFC card of 2023. Now, it is in the UFC Apex, which absolutely sucks, but still, the UFC is back. Excited for it before, the start of Dana White's Power Slap series. Oh yeah, on TBS. So excited for that because, of course, Dana White is the Power Slap champ. Anyways, let's get into it, man. Imavov Gastelum in the main event. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. All right, so we're starting the year off with Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Eubanks here in a fight at 125 pounds. Now, for Priscilla Cachoeira, I thought she was going to, actually, this is at 135, excuse me, but for Priscilla Cachoeira, I thought she was just going to be on her way out of the UFC after she lost the Jillian Robertson fight. Now, given she had won back-to-back fights by knockout in the Shanna Dobson win and the Gina Mazzani win, but given Dobson and Mazzani are two fighters who are no longer in the UFC, and then she ran into Robertson after that, Cachoeira, she lost bare naked choke in the first round. She had the whole thing where she was trying to, gouge Robertson's eye out in that fight, but, Cachoeira loses, she taps out. I think she either went out or tapped out. Anyways, after that, she fights Ji-Yeon Kim. It's a fight I didn't think she was going to win, but she went in there. She beat Ji-Yeon Kim in a fight where, let's be honest, Cachoeira didn't win that fight. Ji-Yeon Kim outstrikes her 170 to 102. You look at that fight, you go look at it back. I thought Ji-Yeon Kim won every single round in that fight, for being honest. I don't see a pathway to victory for Cachoeira, but she's able to keep that fight competitive. She wins it by unanimous decision, which is absolutely ridiculous. And after that, she beats Ariane Lipski. Now, Lipski, she goes in there in San Diego, does Cachoeira. She puts down Lipski early in that fight, and she finishes her in 1 minute. She's a plus 175 dog in that fight. And what Cachoeira has shown so far in her UFC career is that, okay, given she's not the greatest all-around fighter, she does have a loss to Valentina Shevchenko too. I'm just felt like I should point that out there, but she does have some loss to Jillian Robertson, who just submitted Rose Namajunas on Fury Pro Grappling, but still, Cachoeira does have a lot of power. If she catches you, she is probably going to put you down. For the weight class, she's got a lot of power. It's power that I don't know if Eubanks is really going to be able to, handle. Eubanks is 37 years old. She is coming off of a TKO loss to Melissa Gatto in her last fight. Gatto sat her down with a body kick, and Eubanks beat Elise Reed, but Elise Reed is not close to elite in this weight class. She lost to Penny Kinzag, she lost to Kelvin Vieira. Eubanks has fought some good fighters, but she is going towards this downward trajectory right now that is not looking too great for her career. That's why I'm going to take Priscilla Cachoeira. I'm going to take the zombie girl. I don't think I've ever taken Cachoeira in a fight just because why, but at this point I'm going to. I don't feel great in picking Eubanks at this point in her career. I think she is getting up there in age. She has fought a lot, and I think at this point in time, Cachoeira is the better fighter. They both, are 500 in the UFC. Cachoeira is 4-4. Eubanks is 5-5. I think Cachoeira is going to catch her early. I think she's going to start the year off with a bang, just in the UFC's terms. I think Priscilla Cachoeira is going to put down Eubanks in the first round. I think she's going to finish here. It's very rare I pick women's finishes, and especially with Priscilla Cachoeira of all people, but if Cachoeira's going to win this fight, it will likely be by knockout, and that's why I'm going to take the zombie girl to start off the 2023 UFC year, I guess, with a first round knockout win over Eubanks. Okay, so we've got the return of Jimmy Flick, and he'll be taking on Charles Johnson. This fight's really interesting, just considering the odds in this fight started about even. I think Johnson initially opened as a slight favorite. I think he got minus 115 for Charles Johnson. I think minus 105 for Jimmy Flick, and then all of a sudden the line shifted all the way, up to Charles Johnson minus 500 for this fight. And then, Flick was coming back at plus 490 or plus 450 for this. Just weird. It's shifted back to Johnson minus 365 and Flick plus 300. But this fight, again, does feel sort of like a pick'em fight. And now here we are. It's kind of interesting. And of course, gotta be a little bit suspicious because of the Derek Minner, Shylon Nurmagomedov fight, where, of course, 10 minutes before the fight, it goes from Nurmagomedov being a minus 150 favorite to him becoming a minus 650 favorite. And all of a sudden, Minner it doesn't take a dive, but you knew he wasn't supposed to be in there. And that was, of course, the whole James Krause controversy. Obviously, Flick and Johnson have no affiliation to James Krause at all, so I'm not suggesting that's the case. But it's just weird how that's, the lines have shifted for this fight. Flick doesn't really understand what's going on with this. I've seen an interview with him. He doesn't really, he said better for him, I guess. He's a plus 500 dog, but it's just interesting. I get maybe the philosophy that, okay, maybe Flick's coming in here for a paycheck just because he's been out for 3 years and now he's trying to come back and, Charles Johnson is a guy who, given, I think a lot of people thought he lost the last fight. I think you can make the case Charles Johnson should be 0-2 in the UFC. You look at the Zhalgal-Zhumagulov fight. Obviously, Zhumagulov now retired because of that controversial decision. I thought Zhumagulov won, but they gave the decision to Charles Johnson. Nonetheless, it's a close fight, but it was just, I guess, an accumulation of Zhalgal-Zhumagulov being on the wrong end of a lot of decisions. But really, when you watch that fight, Zhumagulov wins rounds 1 and 2, and then Johnson comes back to win that third. But anyways, it's fine. For Jimmy Flick, though, this is a guy who, comes in the UFC. He beats Cody Durden. He's 1-0 in the promotion. He's supposed to fight Francisco Figueiredo the next year in 2021. He retires at a local show, I believe in Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken, or is Oklahoma. He retires at a local regional MMA show. And he decides in early 2023, he wants to come back. He wants to fight Jeff Molina. Fight gets canceled, of course, because Molina's controversy with the James Krause thing, or I guess Molina's affiliation to James Krause, and none of those guys from that camp fighting, at least right now. And instead he gets Charles Johnson on short notice, and Johnson's fought, just 2 months ago. Normally I take Charles Johnson here. I would take, in a pick'em fight, I'm still taking Charles Johnson. I think, Flick's a guy who has been stopped multiple times by strikes. You look back at his losses on his record. You look at his last loss coming in 2019 to Ray Rodriguez. Rodriguez finishes him with strikes in the second round. Chris Gutierrez back in 2018 finishes him in the third round. He gets finished by TKO in 2016. He gets finished by KO in 2012. Like, most of his losses are by TKO, so if Flick is going to lose, it'll likely be by that. And we have seen Charles Johnson go in there against a really dominant wrestler, Muhammad Mokaev, and now he didn't get submitted by Mokaev. He got taken down at will, but I think Charles Johnson fought the fight a lot better than what people thought he was going to fight that fight. Mokaev goes 12 for 26 on his takedowns. I think Charles Johnson's going to win. I think Johnson's going to go in there. I think he's going to beat Jimmy Flick. I think Johnson will be able to keep the fight standing, and if he is able to keep the fight standing, he should have a lot of success on the feet against Flick. And again, we've mentioned it about how Jimmy Flick, again, really good submission fighter, but if Johnson can stay on the feet, he should have a lot of success, and Flick has been finished multiple times on the feet before in the past. So I'm going to take Charles Johnson. All that, taking that into account, Jimmy Flick coming off 3 years layoff, I like Charles Johnson in this fight. I think Johnson's able to go out there. I think he will find a finish. I'm going to take Charles Johnson and win this one by second round TKO. Next up, we've got Dan Argueta taking on Isaac Dulgarian. For Argueta, coming off his first fight in the UFC, it's a loss to Damon Jackson, who we're going to see later in the co-main event spot. But in that fight, Argueta, does all right. Jackson out-wrestles him pretty much throughout the entirety of the fight, but Argueta does, fight back in the third round, just put out a pretty good performance, I would say, for himself in the third. Makes it a close round. You can make the case that he does win that third. But Argueta is a good fighter, of course. Following the Ultimate Fighter, lost to Ricky Tercios in the first round, but since that loss to Tercios, went to LFA, won a fight by armbar in the first round, then came back, won a fight by TKO in the third round in a main event spot, and then won the LFA Bantamweight Championship after that by split decision, then proving his way to get back into the UFC. And Argueta, really good fighter. He's got a decent stand-up game, but the ground game out of Argueta is where he's going to specialize in. He's going to try to take you down. He's going to try to work on you with his strikes on the ground and also with his submissions. Now, he's going to be taking on Isaac Dulgarian in this fight, and Dulgarian will be making his UFC debut. Last fought early in 2022 on FAC 12 looking for a fight. I believe he was awarded the contract on that card, if I'm not mistaken. He was in the main event against TJ Britton. He won by knockout in the first round. He was one of the guys Dana White was there to see. Undefeated to that point in time. Really hadn't fought anyone before he fought Britton, but he went in there and beat Britton. Beat Britton where he's good at. Britton, a primary boxer. Dulgarian hit him with a big shot, finished him in the first round. Now he's here in the UFC. Again, though, with Dulgarian, he is only 5-0. He's only had 5 pro fights. I think he's going to go out and try to, really put away Argueta early in this fight. Now, Dulgarian is not horrible on the ground either. He does have some submission wins under his belt as well, but I don't think he's going to be good enough to fight off what Daniel Argueta is going to be giving to him with his top pressure. And I think that's going to make it tough for Dulgarian to fight off his back. So I don't really think Dulgarian's going to be, too much of a factor on the ground. I think it's going to be, if he's going to win this fight, he's going to have to finish Argueta on the feet standing. I really don't see too much of a pathway for him on the ground, just because I think Argueta is going to be pretty overwhelming down there for him. Because again, when you look at what the body of work Argueta has put together, again, first UFC fight being Damon Jackson is no walk in the park at all. And I think Argueta, even in a loss, even in not that memorable of a fight, did hold his own decently in that fight. So I think, I like Argueta to beat Isaac Dulgarian in this fight. I think if Dulgarian, again, is going to win, it will be by an early stoppage. I think Argueta is able to weather the storm early. I think he's going to be able to take down Dulgarian multiple times in this fight, and if he's able to do that, it's going to be all Argueta in this one. I think he will find that takedown early against Isaac Dulgarian. I think that's going to propel him towards victory. So I'm going to take down Argueta to win this one, coming in at -190. I do like him to win this one by decision. I think he's going to put together an all-around performance that, again, should tire out Dulgarian early in the fight and should be able to push him to victory. So give me Dan Argueta to win his second fight in the UFC by unanimous decision. So a flyweight fight now between Carlos Hernandez and Nascimento. For Nascimento, 1-1 now in the UFC, with his first fight being that loss to Tiger Ulanbekov. Loses that one by split decision. It's a fight where Ulanbekov really just grounds him for the most of that fight. Ulanbekov with 12 minutes of control time in that fight, but what Nascimento is able to do on the feet in that fight does kind of make it a little bit close. One judge did score that fight for Nascimento, even though I think it was pretty obvious that Ulanbekov did win the fight. Now, his opponent on Saturday will be Carlos Hernandez. Hernandez coming off a split decision win over Victor Altamirano, his first fight in the UFC. It is a razor-thin decision. Now, I still think that Altamirano won the fight, but I can see the case for Hernandez as well. Hernandez does a pretty good stand-up game. He can get it done on the feet as well. He did have another close fight in the Contender Series too. That's how he got his way into the UFC. But in this fight, I mean, you look at Nascimento's last win, and it's just, the pure destruction, really, of Jake Hadley. He comes in there, and he just grounds Hadley pretty much throughout that entire fight. Nascimento does fight well on the feet as well, but it's really just, again, it is the constant pressure and is the ground game of Alhassan Nascimento that does win him that fight. All 3 rounds, again, won by Nascimento. It is a pretty dominant wrestling performance in that fight. Really didn't take him too many takedowns, too, to get the fight down. The only round that's kind of competitive is the third, but Nascimento, to that point, had already banked the first 2 rounds. Really, I think Nascimento was able to do the same thing to Carlos Hernandez in this fight. I mean, you look at this, a guy, Nascimento, who had a close fight against Tiger Ulanbekov. I mean, I know he had the loss to Halian Paiva in the Contender Series, but that's a split decision as well. Nascimento gets in a lot of close fights. For one, though, I don't think this is going to be one of them. I really don't. I really think Nascimento is going to be able to go in there. I think he will be able to ground Hernandez, and I don't think Carlos Hernandez is going to be able to do all that much against the game of Alhassan Nascimento. I think Nascimento will be able to ground him. I don't think Hernandez is going to be able to get back up at some points. I think Hernandez might see some success in the feet. I think he is quicker than Nascimento striking-wise, but I think Nascimento should be able to find a way to either trip him or bring him to the ground. That's why I'm going to take Alhassan Nascimento to beat Carlos Hernandez. I think he'll become 2-1 in the UFC with a decision victory here on Saturday night. Next up, we've got Javid Basharat taking on Mateus Mendonca. Going to start here with the UFC newcomer in Mendonca. I mean, hell, his first fight, or his Contender Series fight against Sheikh Ajiam, incredible finish. Oh my goodness. I mean, defeating the CES Bantamweight champion. He comes in there, big right cross, right behind the ear, sits down Ajiam, wins the fight by first round knockout. It is an incredible victory for Mendonca, making his way into the UFC, because he was a little bit improving going into that fight. He did have a lot of wins up to that point, but really, Ajiam was his first big fight, and he went in there and he took care of business. And again, Mendonca, only 23 years old, making his UFC debut, but man, taking on the snow leopard in Javid Basharat. Basharat is very good, 13-0. He has not seen defeat just yet. When you look at his run so far through the Contender and the UFC, comes into the Contender Series, beats guys 16-0 to that point in time, submits him with a guillotine choke in the 3rd round, and Basharat, I mean, was pretty dominant up until that point. Takedowns, grounding his opponent, not allowing any space for his opponent to breathe. And in the second fight in the UFC, comes in there, takes care of Trevin Jones, and it's a different approach in that fight for Basharat than his Contender Series fight. The Trevin Jones, Javid Basharat fight is Basharat outstriking him. Basharat goes in there, wins the first round of the feet, wins the second round of the feet, wins the 3rd round of the feet, showing, okay, he can get it done on the ground. He can get it done striking as well. And then his 3rd fight in the UFC, the Tony Gravely fight, comes in there and beats Gravely. I mean, Gravely does win a round. Gravely does go in there, and I think you would give Gravely the first, but the second round is all Basharat coming in there, getting a takedown, outstriking Tony Gravely, and more than the same in the 3rd. It's just all striking out of Basharat, outstriking Tony Gravely 42-13 in that 3rd round. Basharat's a good fighter. I mean, he really is. This is the reason this guy's undefeated. He can get it done on the ground. He can get it done on the feet. Wherever he feels like he needs to take this fight, he should be able to win. That's how I see this one going against him and Mendonca. I think Mendonca, again, shows a lot of power striking-wise, but I think Basharat really is not going to be that guy that's going to get himself into too many precarious situations in the feet where he's going to leave his chin exposed. On the ground, yes, Mendonca does have some grappling, but I think that really is where Basharat should find the most success in this fight. Yes, I think he will be able to win this fight standing-wise, but on the ground, really, I don't find this fight all that competitive. I think Basharat on the ground will be able to take down Mendonca, hold him down there. And I really don't think Mendoza is going to be able to offer up anything off his back against a guy like the Snow Leopard and Javid Basharat. So again, I think he's got advantages in more than one area in this fight, but especially on the ground. That's why I'm going to be taking Javid Basharat to go in there. I think he will be able to beat Mateus Mendoza by decision. I don't think we're going to see a finish here. I think, again, if Mendoza is going to win this fight, it's going to be by a crazy highlight reel knockout. Again, though, a guy at plus 290 is likely not going to do that, especially against an undefeated guy in Javid Basharat. But hey, someone Zoe has got to go. I think it will be Mateus Mendoza, though, in this fight. That's why I'm going to be taking the Snow Leopard, Javid Basharat, to win this fight, and I got him by unanimous decision. Okay, so 2 UFC debuts in this fight. We've got Nick Fiore taking on Mateusz Rebecki. I mean, it's a fight where Rebecki here, I mean, he should be able to win. Mateusz Rebecki is 16-1 in his professional career. He's coming off a win in the Contender Series where he won in 3 minutes by rear naked choke finish. And he's taking on a guy, Nick Fiore. Now, Nick Fiore is so unproven. I mean, it is incredible. I think that this guy's in the UFC. You look at his run so far in Combat Zone. That's the only place he has fought professional MMA fights so far. His first fight, Jay Ellis. Okay. If you don't know who Jay Ellis is, this fight's in 2020. Jay Ellis is currently now 16-106. Yes, that is his record. He was 15-91 coming into that fight with Fiore. Fiore beats him by rear naked choke in the first round. He takes down Ellis immediately with a back suplex, takes his back, swings him by rear naked choke. Okay, they fight again. Yeah, so later in 2021, Jay Ellis, since the initial fight with Nick Fiore, fights 7 more times. He loses every single fight. They fight again. Jay Ellis, of course, loses to Nick Fiore. Fiore this time knocks him out at CES 63. Okay, after that, he gets another fight in Combat Zone. I forgot, so he did have one fight in CES. But after that, he goes into Combat Zone. He beats the guys 3-9 by triangle choke in the first round. Then he beats guys 8-4, by far his best win, Andre Bors. But again, this is a guy who was coming off 2 straight losses. Fiore beats him by rear naked choke in the first round. Then he fights George Shepard after that. He beats Shepard by rear naked choke. This is a guy who's 15-14, who has not won a fight since 2013, I believe. And then he fights Steven Stengel in his next fight, a guy who's 5-19, now 5-20, a 38-year-old fighter who, I mean, he was coming off a win. He beat Jeff Reynolds, who was 0-0, but before that, his last win was 2013. Exactly. Fiore has not fought anybody all that great. And sure, he's shown, okay, his grappling's not that bad. He's a Renzo Gracie black belt, fighting at the New England Cartel camp over, of course, in Massachusetts. That's with Rob Font and Calvin Cater, but like, still, I mean, Rebecki here's the way better fighter. This guy has got way more power on the feet. His ground game's so much better. I don't think this fight's going to be all that close. I mean, there's a difference between, again, Mateus, who's got 17 pro fights, and Fiore, who's got, 6? Come on now. I mean, this is a mismatch. There is a reason, and again, they're both UFC debuting fighters, but there's a reason, again, why Rebecki is a minus 660 favorite, and Fiore's coming back at you at plus 490. I don't think this fight's all that close. I think Rebecki's going to get this fight any way he wants it. I think to avoid the potential, minimal danger this fight could face on the ground, I think Rebecki's going to avoid the ground game, and I think he's going to get the fight done before the fight even hits the mat. So I'm going to take Mateusz Rebecki to win this fight by first round knockout against Nick Fiore. Again, I don't see it being all that competitive. Rebecki's going to go in there. He is going to land a big shot at Fiore early. I don't think Fiore has seen the power that someone like Rebecki does possess. And that's why I'm going to take Mateusz Rebecki to beat Nick Fiore. I got him by first round knockout. Again, I don't think this fight all that competitive at all. So someone's going to get knocked out. We've got Abdulrazak Alhassan taking on Claudio Ribeiro. We've got even odds for this fight too, but you look at both of these guys, finishes so far, just waves of victory so far in their professional careers. Abdulrazak Alhassan, 11 wins in his pro career, 11 by knockout, 0 submissions, 0 decisions. You look at his opponent, Claudio Ribeiro, 10 wins in his professional career, 10 wins by knockout, 0 by submission, 0 by decision. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Claudio Ribeiro and Abdulrazak Alhassan, someone is getting knocked out. You look at Ribeiro's win on the Contender Series. I mean, it is a massive knockout finish. His opponent overextends on a spinning back fist, and boom, Ribeiro lands a huge left hook, knocks him out. My goodness, this man has so much power. He beats Ivan Villanueva in the Contender Series, and now they give him a guy who is going to go out there and, for the most part, throw in his UFC fights in Abdulrazak Alhassan. But we'll see. Abdulrazak Alhassan does have some fights where he's a little bit tentative. He does get tired pretty quickly. You are going to see that some out of Abdulrazak Alhassan. I mean, just a given with some of his fights. But then you get fights like the Alessio Di Chirico fight where he knocks him out with the head kick, right? I mean, Abdulrazak Alhassan is very talented in there, and he's got so much power. But again, you look at the fights that he wasn't on the right edge, end of the scorecards with him. The Buckley fight, okay, it's a close fight. I actually thought Abdurrahman Alhassan won that one, but Buckley out-wrestles him to victory. The Jacob Malkoun fight, okay, Abdurrahman Alhassan just gets grounded. But again, he's not going to have to worry about that in this fight with Ribeiro. Ribeiro is not going to try to wrestle him. And then you look at the Munir Lazez fight, the Chaos Williams fight, 2 fights where he gets outstruck. In the Williams fight, he gets knocked out in. It's just, again, Abdurrahman Alhassan has not been that same guy since the accusations that was made towards him after 2018, which I do believe ended up being false, which sucks for him. But now here he is against Ribeiro, and Ribeiro's a guy, again, so far 10-2 in his professional career. Only losses coming in 2018 by split decision, then 2017 by submission. The guy's very good. Ribeiro's very good. He's got a lot of power. It makes for a very intriguing and a very interesting fight. But I can't say with confidence that Abdurrahman Alhassan is going to win the fight because, again, I have not seen Abdurrahman Alhassan really perform. Yes, he got Alessio Gichirico with the head kick, but other than that, you look at the fights that Alhassan has fought. I mean, again, since the layoff, what fight has been good? Lazez, okay, he's competitive. It's a fight of the night, but he loses. Chaos Williams gets knocked down 30 seconds before he can land a punch. Jacob Malkoun just gets, wrestled the entire fight. The Gichirico fight's the one exception, and the Buckley fight, yes, it is a grueling fight. It's a wrestling style fight, but still Buckley gets the better on the scorecards. Alhassan definitely wins the third, but man, it is tough picking up Abdurrahman Alhassan. I think the chin's gonna get cracked again. I really do think so. I'm taking Ribeiro. I think Ribeiro's gonna win this one by knockout in the first round. I mean, if he's going to win, it's gonna be by a knockout. Again, someone is getting knocked out in this fight. You are likely going to see a performance of the night bonus come out of this fight. And I think it's gonna be because of a Claudio Ribeiro knockout. I think he's gonna put down Abdurrahman Alhassan. And unfortunately for Alhassan, I think it will mark the end of his UFC run, at least for now. It's gonna be Claudio Ribeiro to win this one, and by first round knockout, sending Abdurrahman Alhassan straight to the PFL. So we've got the undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov coming back here to take on Hani Barcelos. I mean, Nurmagomedov undefeated so far in his career, 15-0, 3-0 in the UFC, wins over good fighter in Sergey Morozov, finishing him by submission in the second round, rear naked choke. Then beat Brian Kelleher after that by first round rear naked choke finish in 2022. And then most recently, I mean, absolutely destroying Nate Maness. I mean, Maness got 2 strikes off in the entire fight, or 2 significant strikes. Umar Nurmagomedov, 11 minutes of control time in that fight, winning the fight by unanimous decision, 30-25 on that scorecard for Nurmagomedov. And he'll be fighting Hani Barcelos. And Barcelos is a guy who has lost 2 out of his last 3 now. He did win his most recent fight against Trevin Jones. A good performance for Barcelos, really just outstruck Jones, and then wrestled Jones too. He needed him to, and it didn't really allow Trevin Jones to really be in the fight. Barcelos did knock him down as well in the second round. But back-to-back losses for him. The Timur Valiev fight was a fight that I actually thought Barcelos probably should have won. He did knock down Timur Valiev twice in that. He knocked down Valiev twice in that second round. Actually, I didn't make the case for a draw in that fight, but still they give the victory to Valiev, who's no longer in the UFC, who I would anticipate to be in the PFL next season. We will see. But Barcelos didn't get the right scorecard for that fight. And the Victor Henry fight, I mean, hell, Victor Henry's a fighter, man. Henry is a good fighter. Henry came in there and really tuned up Barcelos, beat him by decision. Now, of course, I didn't think Henry was going to lose to Rafael Assunção in his last fight, but it happened, right? But Henry's still a decent fighter who beat Barcelos, outstruck him 181 to 134 in that fight. Really good back and forth fight in that one. But now you get Barcelos versus Umar Nurmagomedov, and I think Umar should be able to ground Barcelos, if we're being honest ourselves. I mean, it's the style of fight he fights. I mean, we haven't seen Nurmagomedov in too much trouble so far in his professional career. He just hasn't been in it yet. He's 15-0 for a reason. There's a reason he's a minus 600 favorite. I mean, this one, I can break it down for as much as you want. Like, Barcelos on the feet. Okay, maybe he does have an advantage on the feet, which he does. But I don't, what is he going to do? He's not going to fend off the grappling game of Umar. It's just not going to happen. No one's done it so far. I mean, I think Maness is a better ground fighter than Barcelos is. I don't think Barcelos is horrible on the ground, but Nurmagomedov is going to be able to swarm him on the ground. I mean, it's just going to be constant pressure. It's going to be a takedown right off the bat, and I really just don't see Barcelos finding that much success, for being honest with ourselves. And actually, maybe I take that back about Maness being a little better than Barcelos on the ground, but still. I like Umar no matter what here. I don't think he's going to be able to get a finish. I think it will be one of those Nurmagomedov performances where he's just holding his opponent down, just keeping them on the ground, and maybe attempting some submissions, but not like hunting for it. So I'm going to take Nurmagomedov to win. I think he gets it done against Hani Barcelos. Minus 600 favorite. I do see this one going the distance though. So I'm going to take Umar Nurmagomedov to beat Hani Barcelos. So they go get it done by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got Kelvin Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. And for Kelvin Vieira, hey, I mean, back-to-back main event wins for her in back-to-back fights that I didn't think she was necessarily going to win. I mean, I thought the Miesha Tate fight, I picked Tate to win the fight. Kelvin Vieira beats her by decision. It is a closer fight than I do remember it, honestly. Tate does do all right in that one, but it is kind of a razor thin. No, it's a 3-2 victory for Kelvin Vieira. I don't see the 4-1, but I see 3-2 for Vieira. And then after that, okay, she didn't beat Holly Holm. That's the one that's kind of ridiculous. Holm beats her. Like, Vieira gets out wrestled in that fight. I mean, Holm out strikes her. It's just, I don't see the pathway to victory for Vieira in that fight. It's a weird decision. It's a boring fight. Like, don't go watch the fight. But still, I thought Holm won. But now we get Vieira and Raquel Pennington. Pennington's look really good. I mean, she's won 4 straight fights after losing to Holly Holm back on the Connor Cerrone card in 2020. She beats Mariner now. She beats Penny Kianzad. She beats Macy Chasson by guillotine choke in the second round. And then most recently, she beats the PFL zone, Aspen Ladd, by unanimous decision in Jacksonville at UFC 273. But you're going to see a striking fight in this one. Pennington and Vieira, you're going to see both of them strike, I think. I mean, you look at Vieira, she does lose to Yana Kudinskaya back in the Blades Lewis fight card. That's her last loss back in 2021. And then, of course, she does have the back-to-back victories over Tate and Holm. And she's really going through this run where she's taken on either champions or former title challengers, because now she's getting Pennington, or really Yana Kudinskaya was a former title challenger as well. And now she's getting another former title challenger in Raquel Pennington. I'm going to take the upset here, though. I'm going to take Raquel Pennington to win this fight. I really like what she has put together over the last 4 fights. I know she's an underdog, I think, going into this fight. Very slight underdog and not the favorite, at least on Tapology. But I think Pennington is able to bring it to Vieira. I've picked against Kelvin Vieira a lot, and I'm going to do it again. I think I like Raquel Pennington's brawling style. I think she's going to push forward a lot against Kelvin Vieira. I think she's going to make Vieira a fighter. And I think Pennington, again, is going to always be pushing forward, and I think she's going to make it a very difficult fight on her opponent here in Kelvin Vieira. So give me the underdog in this one. Give me Raquel Pennington to go in here and pick up a victory against a ranked opponent in Kelvin Vieira, an opponent who a lot of people thought in Kelvin Vieira was going to get the next title shot. I don't know who that's going to now. I would assume maybe Juliana Pena again, but for now, give me Raquel Pennington to spoil the title hopes or the title aspirations, at least for now, from Kelvin Vieira. Give me Raquel Pennington to win this fight by unanimous decision. All right, well, I don't really understand why this fight's so high on the card, but here it is. Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. It's interesting because, you know, Soriano, 3-2 in the UFC, losses coming to Brendan Allen and Nick Maximov. Of course, Maximov now out of the UFC. He got cut by the promotion, and yet Soriano's in a co-main event spot. And then, you know, he just beat Dalcha Lujiambula in his last fight by knockout in the second round, which is cool, but like Lujiambula lost to everyone basically, and Edmund Shabazian fortunately got back on the winning track after beating Dalcha in his last fight. But, you know, Puna's in the spot against Roman Kopylov, a guy who is 1-2 in the UFC, came over from Fight Nights Global. He was the champion over there back in 2018, comes over to the UFC, loses to Carl Roberson in his first fight by submission in the third round, and then after that, loses to Albert Duraev by unanimous decision, and gets a third shot in the UFC, a fight where he's taken on Alessio Di Chirico, who Di Chirico in his own right, not the greatest UFC fighter, but Kopylov does go in there and finish Di Chirico in the third round, picking up his first UFC victory. Now he will be getting Punahele Soriano, and you're going to see a striking fight here. You're going to see both these guys exchange. Someone will likely get knocked out. I mean, for as kind of low level as this is, you know, every single win by both of these men combined so far in the UFC have been by knockout. Puna's got 3 knockout finishes, and Kopylov does have 1 knockout finish. You're gonna likely see a knockout in this fight. It's just a matter of who will it come from. I think striking-wise, Puna is a much more sharper striker. He's got better strikes. He's got more power, too, as you look at his 3 wins in the UFC. He's got 5 knockdowns in those 3 wins. 2 against Oscar Peota back in 2019, 2 against Dusko Todorovic in Abu Dhabi in 2021, and then, you know, 1 against Dalcha Lujiambula in New York, eventually, you know, setting up for that knockout finish in the second round. Again, I don't really see much grappling going on in this fight. I don't think it's going to happen. I think you're going to see striking out of both guys. Kopylov does have some power, but it did take him a little bit before he did put down Di Chirico. But no, he did knock down Albert Duraev too. So, you know, Di Chirico does have some power. It's just, I mean, I think Puna's got better striking. I think Puna is going to beat him to the punch. I think Puna, again, has got more power. I think Soriano has, you know, better technical striking, where I think he's going to be able to land more often. I think his head movement is better as well. I think he's quicker. I just think all around Soriano is the better striker between him and Kopylov. It's just, it feels like a weird spot this high on the card, considering this is a guy who's 3-2 in the UFC, who's lost 2 out of his last 3 against guys 1-2. But, you know, here you have it. I think the UFC does want to build up Soriano, because at one point they were really high on Soriano, especially after the Dusko Todorovic win. That was, two guys who were undefeated at the time going up against each other, and Soriano did get the better of him on a spot on ABC. I believe it was the first fight on ABC where Soriano won by knockout. Of course, 2 straight losses after doesn't really help if they gave him Brendan Allen. I thought he was going to win the Maximov fight. He didn't. He lost by decision, a very close fight, but still lost by split decision. Got grounded a lot in that fight. It's what's going to happen to you in a fight in a fight that you're going to see with, of course, Nick Maximov. But here we go, Soriano, Kopylov. I'm taking Punahele Soriano. I think he's going to be able to get the knockout. I got second round finish for Puna Soriano, finally finding that shot in the second round. So, co-main event spot here for Dan Ige taking on Damon Jackson. Ige needs a win bad. I mean, he has lost 4 out of his last 5. His last 3 fights, his only win being that knockout finish win over Gavin Tucker, where it really just halted any momentum Gavin Tucker had. We have not seen Gavin Tucker since. It was a fight that I actually picked Gavin Tucker to win. And yeah, Ige came in there, knocked him out right away with the right cross, put him down, and then since then has lost 3 fights. Now he fights Chansung Jung, the Korean Zombie, after the Tucker fight. It's a fight where Zombie, wins and then goes on to get a title fight afterwards, but Ige loses by decision. It was a fight that Zombie's wrestling really came into play, and it was a fight that, Chansung Jung clinched the victory with his takedowns. And after that, Ige runs into Josh Emmett. He loses. Emmett beats him by unanimous decision in a close fight, but still you can give the win to Emmett, and I feel pretty confident about that. And then his last fight, they just gave him a death matchup in Movsar Evloev. Evloev beats him in every single round. Evloev outstrikes him. Evloev out-wrestles him. That is a tough and very tough fight for any fighter, and Evloev's undefeated. He's 16-0 for a reason. Now, Ige gets Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson's a guy who comes in the UFC, coming from the PFL and LFA. He beats Mirsad Bektic in his first fight on short notice. Then he loses to Ilya Topuria, which is going to happen to you because that guy is very good and very talented. He's undefeated. Then he beats Charles Rosa by unanimous decision. He submits Camuela Kirk by arm triangle choke, beats Dan Argueta by decision. Most recently finishes Pat Sabatini in the first round, TKO ground pound finish for Damon Jackson, beating Pat Sabatini in that one. The guy's good. The guy's really good on the ground. He's got a very good ground game. We will see. Because this fight, I think, comes down to this. Can Dan Ige keep the fight standing? Because if he can't, and it's something that he's been taken down before, if Damon Jackson can get him down, Damon Jackson will likely win this fight. It's just because that's how good Damon Jackson is down there, right? And just how he's able to control his opponents. And again, this is a guy in Dan Ige who has lost 4 of his last 5. But I will say this: it's not a major step down, but it is a step down from taking on guys like Calvin Cater, Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, Movsar Evloev to Damon Jackson. That's no disrespect to Damon Jackson, but he's just not on that level of these other guys. He's not on that top 15 level. And when Danny Ige beat Edson Barbosa, it was probably the worst thing that could have happened to him because it just really accelerated his career. It's a fight that I didn't even think he won. And he beat Barbosa by split decision. Everyone thought Edson won the fight, and then he got fast-tracked to a Calvin Cater spot in the main event, which he looked all right in, but he lost the decision in a competitive fight where he took a lot of damage, and he really has not been the same since. And now we get Ige and Jackson in this one. And again, the last time we saw Ige against a guy who wasn't necessarily on that top 15 level, it was a guy, Gavin Tucker, that he knocked down the first round. But again, can Ige keep it standing? If he can, he should be able to win. If he can't keep it standing, it's just going to be Damon Jackson, I think, just wearing him out on the ground. It's a very competitive fight to pick, I think, because I like Ige's striking. Ige is a very tough guy to put away. He's got good boxing, but man, Damon Jackson has looked good. Odds have since flexed since this minus 135 plus 115 line I got on the screen. It is now even minus 110 on both sides, at least for now as of Sunday afternoon. So we'll see if that does shift since when I'm recording this. But you got an even fight here on paper, and I'm taking Damon Jackson. I'm taking Damon Jackson to beat Dan Ige. I think Jackson's able to go in there. I think he's able to ground Ige, and I don't know if Ige can really do much once he gets back up to the feet. I think Ige is going to have limited moments where he's able to strike against Damon Jackson. I think Jackson's able to win this fight via the grappling side of things. So it can be Damon Jackson, the biggest win of his career, to improve to 6-2-1 in the UFC. And unfortunately for Dan Ige, I think this is probably it for him, at least for now in the UFC. They might bring him back for one more, but like Abdulrazak Alhassan, it's unfortunate for Dan Ige. I think we'll probably see him in the PFL next season. Give me Damon Jackson, though, to beat Dan Ige. He'll get it done by unanimous decision. All right, main event time. It is the first main event spot for Nassourdine Imavov taking on Kelvin Gastelum, who once again finds himself in another main event spot. And let's be honest with ourselves, it is another very tough fight for Kelvin Gastelum. This guy does not take easy fights. It's a fight that a lot of top 15 guys would not take. Nassourdine Imavov is a guy who is, he's only got 1 loss in the UFC. He's got a UFC record of 4-1. He's in the rankings now, or, about to crack the rankings. Just beat Joaquin Buckley in his last fight in Paris. And man, now you give him Gastelum, and Gastelum's a guy who, I mean, he's coming off lost Jared Cannonier, where he lost by unanimous decision. It was a closer fight than I thought it was going to be, but I mean, I thought Jared was going to beat him by decision. It was really the knockdown, though, in that it was a third round that changed the fight, changed the trajectory of that fight, because to that point, I had Gastelum winning 2-0, then Cannonier, I think, wins rounds 3, 4, and 5 afterwards, but yeah. It was that knockdown that really changed things for Jared Cannonier. But when we look at Gastelum, again, the guy does not take easy fights. You know, he steps in a short notice for the Robert Whittaker fight in, what was it? It was in April, I think. Yeah, it was in April. You know, this is a fight that's supposed to happen for the championship way back when. Of course, you know, Whittaker gets hurt, so then you have the Adesanya Gastelum fight. They finally run Gastelum and Whittaker, and of course, Whittaker beats him, you know, pretty handily. He wins every single round of that fight. But it's just Kelvin Gastelum. He always steps up to the plate, and he's always willing to take on these tough fights. And it's the same thing I had with Dan Ige, maybe not to the same extent, because I think Gastelum's, you know, he's shown a little bit more success in his last couple fights than Ige has, but. And of course, I mean, Gastelum's fighting the elite level guys. Look at his losses: Adesanya, Till, Hermanson, Whittaker, Cannonier's one win being Ian Heinisch, and of course, you know, he beat Ian Heinisch pretty, I wouldn't say easily, but he out-wrestled Heinisch and he looked good in that fight. And that's what Gastelum is able to do against a guy who is not on the same level of Whittaker, Cannonier, you know, and Adesanya. And then, hell, they scheduled Gastelum against Dricus Duplessis. Duplessis is a step out. He was booked against Imavov at one point. I mean, before, of course, this eventual fight against Imavov here in January, Gastelum does not take easy fights. He has always taken on the best of the best. And now here he is in a fight that no one wants to take in Nassourdine Imavov. And Imavov is a guy, again, 3 straight wins. The win over Joaquin Buckley is very impressive. He stands in there and trades with Buckley a lot. You know, Imavov is able to mix it up with the wrestling too, but I don't think necessarily the wrestling will come into play too much in this fight, because Gastelum, you know, is a pretty decent wrestler, and you know, he's going to be able to stuff the takedowns of Imavov, and I don't think Imavov is going to you know, really go to that. So I think you're going to see Imavov trying to strike with Gastelum. Gastelum, I think you're going to see trying to wrestle, honestly. Imavov, though, has only been taken down a couple times in the UFC, and that does come from his one loss being Phil Haas. And if you're Gastelum, you're looking at that Phil Haas fight, and you're saying, okay, that's exactly what he's going to have to do in this fight, because Haas, you know, he did get tired at the very end of the third round. That's where Imavov saw the limited success that he got in that fight was at the end of rounds when Haas, you know, when Haas let him up off his feet, basically, and that Imavov blitzed him in the third round, looked very good at the end of that third round. But if you're Gastelum, that's where you're gonna have to, you know, that's where you're gonna have to really focus in on. If you can take down Imavov and hold him down, that's his best pathway to victory. On the feet, I mean, I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult for Gastelum. I think Gastelum's a good striker, but I think Imavov is a little bit better. Of course, both these guys have beat Ian Heinisch. I mean, right after Gastelum beat Heinisch, Imavov beat Heinisch as well. But, you know, you got Imavov coming in at -210. You got Gastelum coming in at +180. Again, if Gastelum can't get this fight down, I don't know. I mean, obviously, he's going to have a puncher's chance. Gastelum does have power, and Gastelum will have the ability of potentially knocking out Imavov. But I haven't seen Imavov get finished just yet, and it's just, again, Gastelum, I don't know what to think. Is it Gastelum not being as good as he once was, or it's just him taking on the best opponents, and just, you know, he's not able to beat that elite level, you know, that elite tier. But, like, still, it's not like he's taking on a guy like, I don't know, who is a, you know, a low middleweight fighter. I'm trying to think. It's not like he's fighting, I mean, it's not like he's fighting Jordan Williams, right? He's fighting or it's not like he's fighting Ian Machado Gary. He's fighting Nassourdine Imavov, a guy a lot of people like in the top 15 and like in the top 10 right now. It's a tough fight for Gastelum, man. I want to pick him, but I just can't. I'm going to have to take the favorite here, Nassourdine Imavov. I'm going to have to take him. I think Imavov's able to, you know, he's going to be able to stop the pressure that Gastelum, or the power shots that Gastelum will throw. I think Imavov is going to fight off the wrestling that Gastelum is going to present as well. And I think we're going to see Imavov go the distance. Cardio and stamina has not been an issue just yet for the French-born fighter in Imavov. We've seen him go the distance with guys like Joaquin Buckley, and even in a loss to, of course, Phil Haas. So I like Imavov, and even in that Phil Haas fight, you know, he came out firing at the end of 15 minutes, right, against Haas. So yeah, I like Imavov to win. I think Gastelum, I think he will see a little bit of success, but I think 49-46 is going to be my scorecard here for Imavov. I think Gastelum will make it interesting. I think Gastelum will make it a brawl in the feet, like he did against Adesanya in their championship fight. I think he will make it a brawl, but I think Imavov, in his toughest fight to date, will be able to stand in there. He will be able to win the brawl against Kelvin Gastelum. He's not going to be able to finish him, of course, because, you know, Gastelum's chin is crazy, but I still like Nassourdine Imavov to win this fight in his biggest fight to date in a main event spot. Nassourdine Imavov comes through through, beating Kelvin Gastelum by unanimous decision. And folks, thank you all for watching the first UFC predictions video here of the year in the main event with Nassourdine, Imavov, and Kelvin Gastelum. If you haven't yet, though, make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. We'll be back next week for the pay-per-view in Brazil, the first UFC Brazil card in a very long time since pre-pandemic. UFC 283 in the main event for the light heavyweight championship. Glover Teixeira taking on Sweet Dreams Jamal Hill in the co-main event. It is the fourth fight between Divas and Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. Also, Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny on the card as well. So, folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure to come back next week for that card in Brazil. Again, folks, thank you all for watching. And Mamba forever.